When success isn't enough. David Martinez grew up in a little town called Brook Hill. It wasn't much to look at, just a few small streets, a couple of gas stations, and houses that were more like boxes stuck together. People in Brook Hill worked hard. Most of them didn't have a lot of money, but they made up for it with something more important: love, community, and a willingness to roll up their sleeves. David's family wasn't different from any other in Brook Hill. His dad, named Samuel, owned a tiny welding shop down on Maple Street. Every morning, before the sun came up, Samuel would be out the door, his lunch wrapped in brown paper, ready for another long day. The shop wasn't glamorous, just a rusty old shed full of metal and sparks. But it was honest work, and Samuel took pride in it. His hands were tough, worn down by years of welding steel, but he never complained. David's mom, named Linda, was the heart of their home. She wasn't wealthy, but she made sure their house was always filled with the smell of something good cooking. Whether it was fresh bread or a pot of stew, Linda made sure their home felt warm and full of life. The house itself wasn't much, creaky floors and walls that were thinner than you'd like, but it had love. David didn't go to school with shiny new shoes or a backpack that looked like it came out of a department store. His shoes were hand-me-downs, and his notebooks often came with dog-eared corners. But Linda always told him, "It's what you write inside that matters." And David believed that. He didn't mind being different. At school, David was pretty average. He wasn't a genius, but he wasn't the worst student either. He got by with decent grades, usually around 70%, and that was good enough in Brook Hill. The kids in his class were like family. They played basketball after school on cracked courts, rode bikes through alleys, and made memories that were simple but real. But deep inside, David had a bigger dream. Every time he walked past the small hospital on Willow Avenue, he would stop for a second and staring through the glass doors at the doctors inside. They wore white coats and walked with purpose. They had respect, they had power, and they helped people. David wanted that. He wanted to be a doctor. He wanted to be someone important, someone who made a difference. One day, after sitting with his dad on the porch, watching the sun set behind the hills, David finally said it out loud. "Dad, I want to be a doctor." Samuel looked over at him with a proud smile on his face, but David could see the worry behind his eyes. Money was tight, and getting into medical school? That was a dream that didn't come cheap. "I know, son," Samuel said, his voice soft. "But if you work hard, we'll figure it out. Promise me you'll keep at it." David smiled, even though inside he knew it wouldn't be easy. But he made a promise too. He'd do whatever it took to make that dream happen. As the years went by, David worked hard in school. He studied late into the night, trying to improve his grades, trying to get into a good college. But when it came time to apply, he found that 70% wasn't enough. He didn't get into medical school. Instead, he was accepted into a regular Bachelor of Science program. It wasn't what he wanted, but it was something. It was a step in the right direction. When he told his parents, they didn't act disappointed. They were just proud that he'd made it this far. Samuel clapped him on the back, saying, "That's my boy. You've got the world ahead of you." David's college years were tough. The city was so much bigger than Brook Hill, and it felt like everyone there had their lives figured out. David worked part-time jobs to make ends meet, tutoring younger students, cleaning classrooms, anything he could do to stay afloat. But he kept going. He finished his degree with decent grades, and even though it wasn't what he dreamed of, it felt like an accomplishment. It was something to build on. After graduation, David found a job at a small company in the city. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough, and he was able to move back to Brook Hill. The quiet pace of the town, the familiar smell of Linda's bread baking in the oven, it all felt like home again. David wore button-down shirts now and carried a briefcase to work. He wasn't a doctor, but he was making a life for himself. As for Samuel, he kept working at the shop. Even though David had a steady job, Samuel wouldn't stop. "A man should stand on his own 2 feet," he'd say, and that's exactly what he did. Then came Emily. David met her at a wedding. She was from Pine Grove, a neighboring town, and she had this way about her that made David feel at ease. She wasn't flashy or loud. She just smiled, listened, and made him feel like he belonged. They started dating, and before long, they were talking about marriage. Their wedding was small but beautiful, which held under the oak trees in Brook Hill. It wasn't fancy, but it was full of love. Samuel and Linda were there, of course, as well as the few friends David had in town. And when they got married, it felt like David's life was finally falling into place. Not long after the wedding, Emily gave birth to twin boys, Ethan and Noah. David could hardly believe it when he held them in his arms for the first time. They were tiny, helpless, and perfect. They were his world now. With a family of his own, David started to push harder at work. He got promoted, and soon enough, they were making more money. With a better income came bigger purchases, a nicer house, a new car, gadgets that weren't strictly necessary but felt good to have. They took vacations to places they'd only dreamed about before. The people of Brook Hill began to notice. "That's Sam's boy," they'd whisper when David drove by in his shiny new car. "He's made it big." For a while, everything seemed perfect. The kids had fancy birthday parties. They ate at upscale restaurants, went shopping for clothes that cost more than David had ever imagined spending. Life felt like a dream. But dreams built on shaky ground can collapse, and David's was no different. The bills started piling up: the mortgage on their big house, the school fees for the twins, the car payments, the credit cards. It all added up, and David found himself struggling to keep up. Money that had once flowed easily now seemed to trickle. Still, he tried to maintain the appearance of success. He didn't want anyone to know how hard things were getting. Then, things took a turn. Samuel got sick. His hands, once so strong, started to shake. The doctor gave him a grim diagnosis, a nerve disorder that would only get worse. Samuel could no longer work. One evening, Linda called David, her voice sounding fragile. "David, we might need some help for medical bills, groceries, just until we figure things out," David snapped. All the stress, all the pressure, it finally broke him. "You want help now?" he yelled. "After all these years? You couldn't give me a good education. You couldn't even buy me decent clothes. And now, when I'm drowning in bills, you want me to help you." Samuel and Linda didn't argue. They just left, quietly, without a word. A week later, David went on a work trip. As he walked back to his hotel one night, he passed a boy standing by the sidewalk, selling colorful plastic toys. The boy couldn't have been more than 10 years old. "Buy a toy, sir, please?" the boy asked. David stopped and looked at him. The boy wasn't begging, he was just asking. His clothes were old, but clean. His eyes were bright with hope. "Why aren't you home?" David asked. "I go to school in the morning," the boy said. "After that, I help my mom and dad. My dad had an accident and lost his hand. He can't work much. My mom's a maid, so I help out." David was stunned. "You're helping your family? At your age?" The boy nodded, like it was the most natural thing in the world. David bought a handful of toys and walked back to his hotel, the rattling sound of plastic in the bag as he went. That night, he couldn't sleep. He thought about his father, how Samuel had worked tirelessly so David could have food, education, and opportunities. He thought about his mother, how she sacrificed for him. And he thought about himself, how he'd yelled at them when they needed help the most. The next morning, David cut his trip short and drove straight back to Brook Hill. When he knocked on the door of his childhood home, Linda opened it cautiously. Her face lit up, but there was hesitation in her eyes. David fell to his knees on the porch. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I forgot what you did for me. You gave me everything I needed: love, strength, and sacrifice. I didn't see that. I forgot." Linda knelt beside him, and her hands gently cupping his face as tears fell from both of them. Samuel, leaning on his cane, stepped outside with a small, sad smile. That evening, they shared a simple meal. No fancy dishes, just stew and bread, like the old days. And for the first time in years, David felt rich. Not in money, but in love, in gratitude, in family. David made changes. He sold the second car, downsized their home, and enrolled the boys in public school. Life became simpler, but in the simplicity, they found happiness. Ethan and Noah spent weekends with their grandparents and learning to mow the lawn and bake cookies. And David, well, he never forgot that little boy, Leo, who had reminded him of what really mattered. Thanks for watching! If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more heart-touching, real-life-inspired tales, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. Your support means the world, and I'll see you in the next one.